Thank you, dear participants, for participating in pre-evaluation test. Now, the first lecture will start by Dr. Prashant Jha. The topic is Perspective on Integrated Weed Management Strategy in Major Crop Production System. Dr. Prashant Jha is a tenured professor of weed science, research and teaching with the School of Plant, Environment and Soil Science at Louisiana State University, USA. Prior to his position, he was an associate professor and then professor and statewide extension weed specialist at Iowa State University. He joined Montana State University as an assistant professor after completing his PhD degree in weed science from Clemson University, USA in 2008. He received his BSc in 2001, MSc in 2003 from CCS Haryana Agriculture University, India. Dr. Jha research aims at developing sustainable integrated weed management strategy and AI-driven precision weed control technologies in agronomic production system of the US. He has more than 100 peer-reviewed publications, 76 popular articles, delivered 90 invited presentation and more than 80 extension program and stakeholder orientation event. He has mentored several graduate student, postdoctoral research specialists in his program and taught undergraduate and graduate courses related to weed biology, herbicide physiology, and integrated weed management. He is a recipient of prestigious awards such as Outstanding Researcher Award from Western Society of Weed Science USA, Early Career Weed Scientist Award from Weed Science Society of America and Western Society of Weed Science USA. Dr. Jha has served as associate editor of Weed Science and Weed Technology Journal and has served on board of director for the North America Weed Science Society and chaired several different committees. With this brief introduction, once again, I invite Dr. Prashant Jha to deliver his lecture. Welcome you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Archana. I really appreciate the invitation and thanks for the invitation as well as the introduction. So with your kind permission, I would like to share the slide.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Okay, can you hear me well?
Yeah, Doctor, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It is audible, sir.
Yeah. So thanks for the invitation again. Thank you, Dr. Dubey, and thank you, Dr. J.S. Mishra, for this invitation and this opportunity to be a part of this great national training organized by the Indian Society of Weed Science as well as the Directorate of Weed Research in Jabalpur. It's a great honor to be in this event. So I'd like to start my definitely over the last 13 years while in academics, I have been in three major regions, which are the major US crop production regions, is the Northern Great Plains while I was at Montana State University, as Dr. Archana mentioned during the introduction, and then moving to the Midwest at Iowa State University, and then in the Southern US where I'm right now, as well as where I got my PhD degree. So I will give an overall, I will not show you a lot of data today, but an overall perspectives on the integrated weed management strategies and why there is a need for developing those strategies here in the US as well as globally. As you are aware of, this particular graph here is showing the herbicide discovery since 1935, 1940. The first herbicide chemistry that was brought into the marketplace was 2,4-D. And since then, we have seen a lot of new herbicide chemistries up until 1995. But after that, as you can see, the straight line, it's a drought period where no new herbicide sites of action have been discovered, especially in the US corn, soybean, and cotton production systems. Over the same period, starting from 1995, or I would say like in the early 2000s, we have seen a rapid evolution of herbicide resistance globally, and especially in the United States, with the first evolution of herbicide-resistant palmer amaranth, which is now regarded as the superweed of the US and North America. So since then, we have not seen any new herbicide site of action, but weeds have continued to evolve resistance to 21 out of 31 or 32 and targets site of action of herbicides that we know of. Palmer amaranth with multiple resistance to like 9 different herbicide chemistries is definitely a concern, as well as the water hemp. As we have rapid evolution of glyphosate-resistant weeds, especially palmer amaranth, water hemp. And when I talk about some of this work that I did almost like 10 years back at Montana State University, the problem in the US Great Plains area or region was kochia. So predominantly that region has the wheat fallow production system, as you can see here. And this is the trail of kochia with the tumble mechanism of seed dispersal. As one plant is resistant, it can tumble across the whole field, and you will have multiple plants that are going to be resistant in that field. Similar situations or trail of resistant kochia we saw in sugar beet as well as soybean and corn crops in the Great Plains region. What I think and what I have learned over the past several years is a deep understanding of the biology and the ecology is one of the major things that we need to focus to develop or to better understand the evolution of herbicide resistance in these weeds, as well as to develop the integrated weed management program specific to that crop or cropping system. We looked at the various mechanisms of resistance evolution and the novel mechanism of resistance to glyphosate, also known as Roundup, the most popular herbicide in the world, was the EPSPS gene duplication, where the plant resistant individual was making multiple copies. We saw that in kochia in the Great Plains region, and also it was it has been seen in other weed species like palmer amaranth, as you can see here, as well as water hemp. We also wanted to know, like, well, with this evolution of glyphosate resistance, is the resistance trait is undoing any kind of fitness cost to the population? If there is a fitness cost, then definitely you will expect a decline in the resistant alleles in the population. However, with the kochia as well as with the major weeds like water hemp and palmer amaranth, we did not see any fitness cost endured or conferred by the gene duplication mechanism, which means that even if you are not applying any glyphosate, the glyphosate-resistant kochia seed bank is still going to be persistent, which means that we need to reduce the seed bank. So the whole objective is to reduce the seed bank to prevent any survivors. So that needs an integrated tactic approach where we are combining chemical, cultural, and mechanical practices. And that's what the majority of the focus of my research over the last 13 years have been. So this particular field has multiple resistance evolution in kochia with glyphosate, dicamba, ALS, and PS2 inhibitors, which is atrazine. And on the left-hand side, you see the no-till production field, and on the right-hand side, the grower decided to go and use a in-row cultivation. You can see definitely there is reduction in the kochia here, but still the kochia is still there, the weed is still there within the rows that the cultivator cannot reach. So how we can use these tactics at a cropping systems level, that's the main goal. So in order to fulfill that objective, we designed a IWM approach, multi-tactic approach to manage herbicide-resistant kochia in the irrigated western cropping systems, which is predominantly corn and sugar beet. As I said, like understanding the biology and ecology, and that's what I'm trying to show here, is the emergence pattern of kochia across 6 to 7 different states in the US Great Plains region, starting from Montana up in the very north up to New Mexico, which is in the southern Great Plains. We see differential emergence pattern or ecotypes or biotypes, whatever you call that, as the emergence pattern is early rapid. We are seeing some kochia coming a little later and more rapid. And then we also saw some extended emergence period of kochia as we move from north to south within the Great Plains region. This graph is the same graph looking at the emergence pattern of kochia. And what I have added here is the various planting dates of the crops that are grown in that region, starting with spring wheat, or winter wheat, which is planted in the fall. Spring wheat in that region is planted very early in the spring when kochia has not started emerging, and followed by sugar beet, followed by corn, and dry beans or soybeans are the late planted crops around May 20, mid of May that the growers plant dry beans in that region. So you can see here is by the time you are planting your dry beans, 90% of the kochia has already emerged. So there is definitely there should be an approach like a stale seedbed approach, where you, with every irrigation or with every rainfall event, there is a flush of weeds coming out, and you are doing tillage to let those weeds emerge, and then killing those with non-selective herbicide or a subsequent tillage. Wheat is an early planted crop, so it is making a canopy and will have definitely a suppressive effect on the kochia cohorts or the wheat cohorts that are emerging during the growing season. At the same time, wheat is harvested early when the weeds have not produced seed. So this is kind of like a layout of this long-term study, which went for 4 to 5 years, where we have different crops and crop rotations. We have intensive tillage, and no-till practices or the minimum tillage, and we have different levels of crop rotation as well as herbicide use patterns. For example, total reliance on all the crops in all the 4 years with one chemistry, ALS, and then we have ALS rotation, 1 year ALS, the other year a different side of action, and then we have tank mixtures. I'm not going to show all the data here, but what is more important here is the effect of crop canopy on the kochia density, as you can see, as a result of different crops. So sugar beet definitely is a non-competitive crop. So there is a lot of kochia density across the locations. Spring wheat, more competitive, and corn, we saw a lot of kochia emergence. But if you look at the seed production, which is right here, of the weeds, of the weed kochia on a per hectare basis, we see a great effect of corn canopy on reducing the seed production of those kochia plants. At the same time, we saw the reduction in the spring wheat. Overall, as I mentioned earlier, which is, you can see here, the dry beans are planted late. That's why the kochia density is also less within the dry bean crop. This is an overall summary across after 3 years of this study. What we observed is this is the continuous corn rotation over 4 years. And this is corn, sugar beet, which is the general practice in that area, in that region. And then we have different 3 levels of crops, as well as the 4 different crops in all 4 years. What is more strikingly important here is in this data, if you look at the yellow highlighted lines, that is just if you're relying solely on one chemistry in all the crops in all the 4 years, definitely your that is the poorest strategy for managing herbicide resistance, because we need to use multiple modes of action. And this is minimum tillage with very low disturbance, and this is the intensive tillage. Treatments here, we definitely see a reduction in kochia density or weed density as a result of the tillage. But more importantly, even with the use of ALS, one chemistry, one herbicide group or site of action, whatever you call that as, over the 4 years, if you use the same, we see still a drastic effect of a diversified crop rotation from corn, dry bean, wheat, and sugar beet, where dry bean is late planted crop, wheat is an early planted crop, on reduction of kochia density from 480 to 28 plants, even in minimum tillage, and we saw that also in the intensive tillage. So definitely there is an advantage of using a diversified crop rotation, but we have to make sure that we are selecting those crop rotations based on a better understanding of the biology and the seed production potential and the phenology of the seed production of those weeds. So when we are combining all those tactics together, like intensive tillage, use of multiple herbicide sites of action, we are reducing the density from 480 to 1 plant per meter square after 3 years. So overall, not a whole lot of data that I want to present here, but the key message here is an early planted wheat, an early harvest of the wheat, where the kochia seeds were not fully matured, was a key approach. So diversifying the crop rotations based on the diversity of your crop planting and harvest dates is definitely going to be an important biological and ecological strategy to manage those weed seed banks. So definitely these are some of the strategies where you can reduce the selection pressure for development of resistance to particular chemistry. When we coming to the Midwest now and the southern US, the focus of all the researchers here is on 2 major weeds. Actually, it is 3. One is Italian ryegrass, and the top one is the Palmer amaranth, and followed by water hemp. So what you can see here is the Palmer amaranth plant in soybean, and these plants are resistant to 9 different herbicide chemistries. And the mechanism of resistance, we are seeing more and more that they have seen in Australia also with rigid ryegrass, is the metabolism-based resistance, which can confer resistance to these weed biotypes. They are even to unknown chemistries that are not in the market yet. So with that, we are losing our battle right now with the herbicide-only programs in the US crop production or agronomic crop production, which is predominantly corn, soybean, and cotton here in the US. So with lack of herbicide chemistries, it is definitely a challenge for the growers. And right now, the residual herbicides, pre-emergence applied with multiple sites of action, for example, metribuzin, sulfentrazone, as well as Gro-15 herbicides like S-metolachlor or acetochlor, combined together, premixes are in the market to extend the residual activity, because we are not able to get control of these weeds. At the same time, a layered soil residual program has been the foundation over the last decade, where you are putting a pre-emergence at the beginning of the season, a residual herbicide, followed by another residual herbicide over the top application in conjunction with your post herbicide, because weeds are getting resistance to all the post herbicides, including the recent evolution of resistance to 2,4-D, dicamba, and glufosinate, which in Palmer amaranth as well as water hemp. So the focus has to be on some of these other cultural strategies, like how we can reduce the crop row spacing. I mean, we have done this research for so many years, 30 years, 40 years, cover crops, and some of the new technologies like harvest weed seed control, as well as precision weed management. Just one slide here, looking at managing the weeds like water hemp or palmer amaranth, when we are using a cereal rye as a cover crop, as you can see in this picture right here, this is a soybean crop, and this is the amount of residue that you can see in the middle of the growing season with cereal rye cover crop that is planted in the fall in the previous year and then terminated at the time of planting soybeans. So the cereal rye has accumulated almost 5,000 kgs per hectare of biomass at the time of termination in soybeans. So that amount of residue is needed so that it causes a physical barrier for those pigweeds that you can see here. And in the absence of the cereal rye, that's how the amount of pressure we had in our plots, as you can see in between the soybean rows. So definitely a cereal rye itself is caused around 30% reduction. When we are reducing the row spacing, generally the row spacing here in the US Midwest is around 30 inches. If we reduce the row spacing to 15 inches and combining those two strategies alone in the absence of herbicide, I'm not talking about herbicide here, we are reducing the water density by more than 40%. And the seed inputs, which is the major emphasis, how we reduce the seed production, we are reducing that just with these two cultural strategies, cover crop and reduced row spacing, by almost 85%. Now I'm going to switch gears and talk about some of the novel tactics that we adopted based on the experience of the growers from Western Australia, looking at some of these harvest weed seed control methods like chaff lining and high impact mills. We brought this technology from Australia as well as from Canada, which I'm going to talk about. Western Australia, 80% adoption of this technology because they're facing challenges with multiple resistant ryegrass, rigid ryegrass. So they're out of luck in terms of using herbicides. So in their system, they're using it in wheat. In our system, we can use it in wheat as well as in the soybean crop, which is the predominant crop for the Midwest and Southern US. So two technologies that I'm going to talk about, one is the chaff lining, and the second one is the seed destructor or the high impact mills. So as you can imagine, these 4, 5 palmer amaranth or water hemp, each plant is carrying 200, 300,000, 2 lakhs to 3 lakh seeds. At the time of soybean harvest, these are most likely resistant. They are escapes from the herbicide programs or in-season weed control, whatever, whether it was tillage or others. So as the combine passes through that field, what happens is it disperses all those weed seeds from those 4 plants. So now instead of 4 plants in one pass of the combine within the 35 feet row width, you have millions of palmer amaranth seeds or water hemp seeds. So that is the practical scenario. So that now with these weeds, we are not talking about economic threshold levels of control, right? We are talking about 99% control or more than that, because a single plant can produce thousands and thousands of seeds. So with this technology, which was developed in Western Australia, this is the picture of a combine. Everything comes at the back of the harvester or the combine through the thresher, which includes the straw, the chaff, and all the seeds that are getting settled down. They are in the chaff fraction of the straw and chaff. So we are putting a baffle here, which separates the straw. So all your straw is still coming out from the harvester, and your chaff is also funneled, and we are directing it into a narrow band. So as you can see, 99% of the weed seeds are in this chaff fraction of this straw and chaff combination. This technology is not going to work for every weeds that are out there, like wild oat or others, grassy weeds. But this is a soybean production field at the time of harvest. We produce some, these are the water hemp plants or palmer amaranth they can retain 70 to 80% of the seeds at the time of harvest. That's where the opportunity is, that you can target those weed seeds at the time of harvest and destroy them. At the same time, some of the research done by Dr. Noseworthy's lab at University of Arkansas, more than 90% of the palmer amaranth plants seeds were retained by the plants at the time of soybean harvest. As I mentioned earlier, widely adopted in Western Australia. This is one of the chaff liner units that I got from and installed in a John Deere commercial combine, S660 combine at Iowa State. We were the first one to look at this here in the US. Very inexpensive method of harvest weed seed control. This research was done sometime, we started that in 2018-19 timeframe. Easy to install, and we tested multiple soybean fields at the time of harvest. This is one of the farmer fields across, it was almost like 2,000 acres with a solid infestation of multiple herbicide-resistant water hemp, as you can see here. And that particular grower has applied 2 to 3 different passes of herbicides during the growing season, and still these plants are still surviving. You can see the chaff line right here as across the 35, as the combine passes through this one pass, it concentrates these chaff lines where the weed seeds are right at the center of that one pass. We put multiple trays beneath those chaff lines, both inside the chaff lines as well as outside the chaff lines, and we saw that more than 95% of the weed seeds were concentrated right here on the chaff line. So that's a great opportunity to capture those weed seeds instead of spreading them across the whole field. So, which definitely would be much easier to manage and could reduce the spread of herbicide resistance in terms of seeds per hectare. We are doing some further evaluations to understand the survival and viability of those weed seeds within the chaff line as well as outside the chaff line, and how this particular integrated weed management tactic of chaff lining is going to work in terms of on a systems level in a soybean corn rotation where we are relying on herbicides. We are also looking, we have an entomologist also in our team. We are looking at the insect predation on these chaff lines because there are a lot of these insect predators, as you can see in this picture, which are continuously feeding in a no-till system where the weed seeds are lying on the soil surface. You would expect a rapid decline as a result of predation, which we generally don't account for because we are we believe in what we see, and when we spray herbicide, we see the plants dying, right? But these predators are playing an important role in this whole ecosystem. So we are also evaluating the impact of those. This picture shows in the following season, which were from soybean. Now in the next year we got corn in the soybean corn rotation. We intentionally left this for demonstration in our field. A fallow without, you can see the corn on both sides, but this is a fallow area for demonstration of this technology, where you can see the chaff line right here. You see the amount of weed pressure on those chaff lines, whereas outside very little. Now we planted corn, and you can still see the chaff line right here with all the concentrated weed seeds within one pass. And we applied the traditional or the conventional herbicide programs with a pre followed by post emergence program. And we also used a banded application versus broadcast application of the herbicides. This is really interesting here, recently published in Weed Science Journal. We saw that a delayed emergence of water hemp or weed emergence was delayed inside the chaff line as a result of the suppressive effect of the chaff And when you are applying a pre-emergence herbicide, you are delaying the emergence, you are preventing the emergence, but at the same time, we see a synergistic effect, a further delay in the emergence of water hemp plants inside the chaff line versus outside. Looking at the herbicide programs and interactions here at after the soybean, and this is the corn phase of the rotation, we see a drastic reduction from 123 to 40 plants per meter square outside versus inside. And then water hemp has an extended emergence period. So these weeds are continuously merging. So even you see that 6 weeks, even after the post application with the pre-only program is not sufficient because you got 46 plants per meter square inside, whereas outside it is only 2 plants per meter square. That's what I exactly showed you in that picture, that outside we are reducing the seed bank versus, and everything is concentrated within these chaff lines. One of the more interesting things here that we observed is, of course, our pre-program and post programs were more effective as we were dealing with less weed pressure outside the chaff line within each plot. But there was no differences in the banded application versus broadcast application as well, which means that you can pretty much manage those chaff lines with the banded application. And over the period of time, when your seed bank is declining out, you can reduce the cost of the herbicide and number of applications as well. One of the very interesting things that we noted here is when we were trying to apply our post-herbicide application, we saw that inside the chaff line, there was delayed emergence, if you remember, I told that. And because of the delayed emergence, the weed size was smaller as compared to outside, which means that we are seeing smaller weeds, so enhancing the efficacy of our post program when we apply smaller weeds versus larger weeds at the same, when they both emerge at the same application window. Overall, this technology, I think of this chaff lining, putting the chute behind the combine where you can have those chaff, and we can use this technology in wheat. We are going to use this in Louisiana this year because wheat is a major cropping system here apart from soybeans. Our target here in Louisiana will not be Palmer amaranth in wheat because it will be Italian ryegrass in wheat. So that you'd expect some nutrient removal in this scenario because you're concentrating a lot of chaff in one central band. But definitely we are reducing the spread of herbicide-resistant weeds to less than 5% of the field because everything is concentrated within that narrow band. So overall reduction in the herbicide use, that's what our data suggests based on the multiple location, multiple years of that data in soybean. And definitely we are integrating other cultural practices to make our limited herbicide tools more effective for the future generation. The second technology on the harvest weed seed control that I'm going to talk about is the seed destructor. You guys might have heard about the Harrington seed destructor, which got very popular in Western Australia. That technology failed. It worked pretty well in the wheat-based production systems, but in our soybean production system, the researchers at Arkansas, they tried that and it did not work very well because it was plugging the combine and there were some other issues, mechanical issues. So we got this technology called the ReadyCop seed destructor, which you can see here from a company based in Saskatoon, Canada. So this is a high impact mill. So it has 2 of these rotors. As the weed seeds are, the chaff containing the weed seeds are passing through these 2 units, they are getting pulverized, they are getting powdered. So it's again, there is some cost associated with this, but not a whole lot. It's an easy to implement, also easy to turn on and off. If you have a field where there is no, for example, if you're harvesting a wheat field where you do not have a lot of weed pressure, you can turn it off because definitely this machine is driving additional horsepower out of your combine, out of your harvester. But if you are in a field, for example, in wheat with a high weed pressure, wild oat or Valdes minor, uh, or any pig weeds, lamb's quarters, definitely you can turn it on and see the benefits. So we use that equipment at the time of soybean harvest. Again, these are not small plot research, small research plots. These are big production plots from the grower fields, thousand, at least 500 to 1,000 acres that we are testing these technologies. So as you can see in the left-hand side picture right here, when your combine harvester is passing through, you see these water and plants carrying the seeds. You will expect some seeds to shatter. And then there will be some seeds that are going to the grain tank, and there will be some losses at the back side. So that's where all your straw is coming out, all your straw, all the chaff containing the weed seeds are right here coming as a powder. So it creates a very dusty situation because everything is getting pulverized, powdered as it is exiting through those two high impact mills. So we were collecting samples of weed seeds, and we took them to the lab and to visualize under the microscope, digital microscope. These are the full intact Palmer amaranth seeds under the microscope. If you know that Palmer amaranth seeds are less than 1 millimeter in size, and the plant produces thousands and thousands of seeds, these are the slightly cracked seeds and moderate to high levels of damage. So you can see the mechanical damage of those weed seeds. Uh, so even the smaller size of the weed seeds, less than 1 millimeter in size, you can cause that level of damage. We did some germination assays and viability test of those seeds, and none of those seeds in these two categories were viable. However, even with a slight crack, you can see the mechanical damage. The viability was reduced by 40%. We are definitely interested to test this in other crops and cropping systems. I think there is a great utility of this system in the wheat and rice production systems of India. Whether you talk about chaff lining or seed destructor technology, there is a great potential for targeting grassy weeds like Italian ryegrass or bonnet grass, or even wild oat, as long as it doesn't shatter before harvest. So we are evaluating the cost benefit of this technology also, because that's what it takes for the grower to adopt the cost and benefit. But based on some of the modeling data, if we can reduce or prevent 50% of the viable seeds to enter the soil seed bank at the end of your cropping season, we can delay the resistance by more than 10 years. And as I said, like with these technologies, I've shown you some of the data, not all. We can reduce the seed bank by 70 to 80% in one growing season. However, it will take multiple growing seasons to achieve the needed goal of reducing the overall seed bank. So we got some funding that we are from the federal funds from USDA, looking at multi-state level, looking at ecological tactics and how we can combine these strategies like cover crop, which is a cereal rye right here, our conventional herbicide programs in the mid-season, and then late in the season targeting the weed seeds with the harvest weed seed control. What would be the overall impact of this IWM program on managing herbicide-resistant weed seed banks? At the very last, I briefly talked about some of the precision technologies that I started working way back in 2016. As you can see, a demonstration of the weed seeker technology in the wheat fallow production system. And then slowly we moved to more sophisticated hyperspectral imaging using our Pika-2 imaging camera. And that was pretty early back in 2016 when we started doing this work. And these are the potted kochia resistant and susceptible plants that we were putting and trying to develop some AI-based classification systems for these weeds. So this is what a normal RGB camera, the field will look like in the wheat production field with these are the potted plants, as you can see here, and this is the classification based on the green. You are seeing the wheat, the susceptible, and the resistant biotypes. So further down, with one of my colleagues who was a computer engineer at Montana State University, we developed some of these low-cost imagers, because once you know this, these hyperspectral cameras are pretty expensive, but once you know where the separation of the weed and the crop is going to be, which wavelength you should be targeting at, then we can. There are a lot of companies that can develop these sensors, which are low-cost sensors within $500 to $1,000 sensors that they can develop. So this is right now at the time of harvest. As you, under the combine, you can see the hyperspectral camera, and this is the image of the field where you can see those weed patches in that particular production field. So what it tells is, and this is the wheat production field right here, what it helps us to develop a better understanding of our weed seed bank and make more informed weed management decisions in the subsequent season. We moved on with this technology, and from ground-based imaging, we moved to a UAV drone-based remote scouting of different weed species and different crops. With our DJI Metre 600 Pro camera hooked up with a Pika 2 hyperspectral camera. This graph here is the spectral difference. You see the reflectance here and the wavelengths. Right here at the near infrared region, you can see here where we saw a clear separation between the sugar beet crop and the weeds. And this is the average spectra of the 3 different weed species, as you see on your right. We further went and wanted to see, like with our drone-based imaging, how much there were some level of inaccuracies as the drone was flying through those fields, but definitely we were able to capture, easily identify and detect the various weed species in the crop. What was more challenging was to detect the resistant biotypes versus the susceptible biotypes of the same species. So our accuracies were not very high, but again, in the range of 70 to 80%. The ultimate goal is to develop these prescription weed maps where we can use site-specific weed management technologies and robotics, which is definitely a major goal for us in terms of reducing the herbicide usage. So this work is continuously evolving right now here across the US, where we are trying to develop this real-time detection and precision herbicide application technologies. And the major challenge is definitely, I mean, we can use the spray drones to spray these. We have drones which can spot spray if you feed the prescription map right now. We do, but definitely the challenge is the identification and detection of those weeds as they, which is very variable based on environmental conditions, based on soil conditions and other factors, and also the different stages of the weed as well as versus the crop. At our state, I also started working on this John Deere's technology of see and spray. You can see, and we are going to do this work here at Louisiana State University as well, which is a real-time John Deere technology. You can see this is 150-foot wide commercial sprayer, John Deere see and spray, where you can see and spray at the same time, reducing the overall herbicide use. But again, this technology is there. It is commercially available, but it is still in the infancy stage right now in terms of, as I said, the major challenge is detection. So we will continue working on that. With that, I would like to end my presentation and will be happy to entertain any questions. And I hope you enjoyed the presentation.
Thank you, sir, for your wonderful lecture. It was very informative. Definitely our participants has been benefited. It was a great start of training session with your informative lecture, sir. And
Thank you
thank you,
so
sir.
much.
Thank you, sir, for giving your valuable time. And I ask participants, if you have any query, you can ask your question. You can type in question answer section which you have on your board. So we will be asking to the speakers. So thank you very much, sir. Once again, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Archana. Thank you.
If anyone have any question, they can raise their hand so they can unmute and speak. So Tushar Mehta has raised his hand. Yes, Tushar Mehta, please ask your question. Gyanendra ji, make unmute to Tushar Mehta. Yes, please.
Doctor, you can take the questions from chat box also.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, the question that I
Yes, sir.
that I see here is what is the average cost of weed management in a wheat crop? That's a good question. I think right now the weed management cost in wheat crop is much less here in the US as compared to corn, soybean, and cotton, because we do not have a lot of resistant weed species there. But in the wheat crop, kochia is predominantly a major problem, as well as wild oat and downy brome. So I would say it is in the range of $40 to $45 on a per acre basis. You can convert that into per hectare. But as compared to corn, soybean, cotton, it is much less. If you talk about corn, soybean, cotton here in the US, it is around more than $100 per acre per application. So just in corn and soybean, there are 13 million acres of corn and 12 million acres of soybean in the state of Iowa in the Midwest, and the annual expenditures is close to $1.2 billion just for one state.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir, there is one more question in the chat box, and that is any technology of weed management strategies based on the AI?
Yeah, I think I don't see the question here, but yes, that's a very good question. I think, as I mentioned here, that AI-based technologies are gaining a lot of popularity here in the North America as well as in Europe. But I think it is still in a very early stage. There is definitely, I mean, we have made a lot of progress in that area, like use of ground robotics. But again, there are a lot of companies who are interested, especially John Deere. I think a lot of researchers are working on this AI-based weed detection is a major challenge, as I said. Using the correct, how we can improve our accuracy of predicting and making those prescription maps. That's the challenge. That's where the precision ag research is getting more and more popular here in the US across the whole agronomy discipline, whether it's including pest management, soils, water conservation, etc. So I see a great place for AI-driven technologies like robotics and all that, but how well they are performing right now, it is definitely a question. It is still in a at a very, I would say, mid-career stage. It is so. There are a lot of I think there is a lot of potential for India to for countries like India to contribute in that aspect, because we have a lot of good brains in that in India itself to develop the AIs and the smart algorithms, which how to improve the weed detection. I think if we can figure that out, that would be the first step.
Sir, thank you, sir. So there is another question from Pranjal. The question is that how a drone is better option for weed control, say for example in rice crop as compared to knapsack sprayer. Also need to know how much cost effective option will be the drone as compared to knapsack sprayer.
It again depends on, it's a pretty broad question. Thanks for bringing this up. When we talk about knapsack sprayer, I don't know what level of accuracy we are achieving with that. When we are talking about like a tractor mounted sprayers, and even in our research plots, we don't use knapsack sprayers. We use more of a CO2 pressurized sprayers. I think which are calibrated. So you have a boom with 4 nozzles that we spray in our plots with the CO2 backpack sprayers. Our accuracy is definitely very good in that respect. And at the same time, when these the picture of the big spray boom that I showed in my presentation, that's 150 feet wide. So we are talking about big acres. As compared to a standard, I will not say knapsack, but a standard current conventional herbicide application strategy versus drone, I would say like the drones based sprayers are going to be equally effective, but again, depending on the environment conditions, right? If it is too windy, you are going to see a lot of drift because and how high you are flying the drones. Generally 20 meters above the ground, we take our imaging data. But if you fly the drone, you have an option to fly the drones a little lower, but the accuracy is going to be a challenge. Again, what kind of nozzles you are using in the drones, what kind of pressure you have. So those are some of the questions which we still need to address. So I don't have a definite answer how well it is right now as compared to a standard or conventional application practice.
So there are many questions, but some specific question I would like to read. And meanwhile, the latter we can send you the question, so you can address later, so we can send the participant. So, sir, there is one question from Dr. Gayatri. What would be the extent of dormant seeds in the chaff line when a large number of wheat seeds are present per unit area? Is there possibility of germination at different times for prolonged period?
Oh, that's a great question. Thank you, Gayatri, for bringing this up. That's a great question. So that's what we are trying to investigate. Here is the persistence of those weed seeds within the chaff line, right? And dormancy is one of the major factors contributing to the persistence or survival of weed seeds. So that's why I said like we were looking at predation and other things of the decline of the weed seeds within the chaff line. But I think when the weed seeds, I showed you that there were delayed emergence as a result of the chaff, which itself suggests that there is some level of dormancy being inducted as a result of the chaff. And it may be because the weed seeds are buried within the chaff. And again, depending on the size of the weed seeds, all these factors will play a role. But you are right with their definitely the dormancy is going to be or playing a major role in this, and understanding that in terms of emergence, as well as if we don't want all the seeds to be dormant there and then keep on coming over years. So that will not be a definite good strategy, because our goal is to let all the weed seeds come, and then we can destroy them either with targeted tillage. We can do prescribed burning to kill those weed seeds late in the fall, because after the crop is harvested, or we can do targeted site-specific applications. So great question on dormancy.
Sir, thank you very much, sir, for addressing the question. We have so many questions. So meanwhile, we will compile the question and we'll mail you so you can address that in your free time, sir. So at the end of session, we will communicate to the participants. Thank you very much, sir, for giving your valuable time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Dr. Mishra, I can see you on the screen. Namaskar.
Yeah, namaskar, sir. Thank you so much. Very comprehensive and very interactive. I think the beginning, our training program beginning is great. We hope that our all programs will be great, sir, with your presence and your.
Thank you, sir. I'm planning to visit the conference.
Yes, sir. Most welcome, sir.
Varanasi. Yes. Finally got the approval. So sorry for the delayed response. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Chaudhary sir. Thank you.
Thank you, dear participants, for making it interactive. We will be definitely addressing your all the queries in meanwhile in the training session. So due to sort of time, we will now begin our next session, the interesting session, which is